Revenge with Karen. I knew things were going sideways when I smelled the ozone. It's a specific scent, sharp, metallic, like a robot farting in a thunderstorm. And in my line of work, it means some idiot is trying to push a 1950s grid into a 2025 energy load. I was knee-deep in the sub-basement of the monolithic brick beast I call the foundry, rewiring a junction box that looked like it had survived a nuclear winter when the vibration started, not the good kind. This was the bass-heavy thrum of terrible EDM music vibrating through the cast-iron pipes, shaking the rust loose and dusting my coffee with tetanus. My name is Rebecca. On paper, I'm the owner and principal operator of a sprawling, retrofitted industrial complex in the gritty heart of the district. To the city, I'm a tax bracket. To the utility companies, I'm a lethal headache who knows more about amperage than their senior engineers. But to the tenants, usually keep that vague. I like the shadows. I like the grease. I like knowing that when a breaker trips, I'm the one holding the screwdriver, not some helpless suit waiting for a service call. Quick side note before I get into the carnage. If you guys enjoy listening arrogant tech bros get dismantled by industrial machinery and contract law, maybe smash subscribe button or drop a like. It keeps the caffeine flowing and the rage focused. All right, back to the grime. So there I was, wiping grease off my forehead with a rag that was 90% oil and 10% regret, when I heard the freight elevator ding. This elevator is older than my ex-husband's excuses. It groans. It complains. It shouldn't be used for anything other than hauling pallets of solar inverters. But out steps him. Let's call him Jason. Jason looked like he was manufactured in a lab funded by Daddy's hedge fund. Was wearing a t-shirt that cost more than my first car, distressed jeans that looked like they'd lost a fight with a lawnmower, and pristine white sneakers that had never touched actual dirt. He was flanked by two clones, guys named Tyler or Braden, holding lukewarm lattes and looking at the exposed piping like they were in a zoo for poor people. Jason didn't just walk, he strutted. He was the new sublet in Suite 404. The original tenant, nice graphic design firm that paid on time and never flushed paper towels, had subleased the space to Jason's disruptive startup without vetting him properly. I hadn't met him yet. I had just seen the paperwork, quantum synergy or blockchain smoothie, or some other buzzword salad that meant they burned cash and produced nothing but noise complaints. I stepped out of the utility alcove, wiping my hands. I was wearing my favorite coveralls, Carhartt, stained with 3 decades of hydraulic fluid and coffee. My hair was pulled back in a messy bun held together by a zip tie. Don't judge. It holds better than elastic. Yo, Jason barked, his voice echoing off the concrete. He wasn't looking at me, he was looking through me. He was looking for a servant. I paused, leaning against a support pillar that was thick enough to stop a tank. Can I help you? I asked. My voice is gravelly, comes from years of shouting over generators and smoking cigarettes when I was young and stupid. He turned, scanning me up and down with a look of mild disgust. It was the look you give a trash can that's slightly too full. Yeah, where's the freight access? We got a shipment of ergonomic pods coming in. The loading dock is locked. The loading dock is locked because it's 6:00 p.m. on a Friday, I said, keeping my face neutral. Deliveries need to be scheduled 24 hours in advance. It's in the building bylaws, he laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound like shaking a box of uncooked pasta. Bylaws? Look, lady, we're subletting the penthouse suite. We don't do schedules, we disrupt. Just open the door. He snapped his fingers. Actually snapped them. At me. The sound triggered a primal rage deep in my lizard brain, kind usually reserved for people who drive slow in the left lane or chew with their mouths open. I don't have the keys on me, I lied. I had the master key, a heavy brass skeleton key that could open the gates of hell if I turned it right, hanging on my hip. Ugh, useless, he muttered to one of the clones. This is what happens when you rent in these up-and-coming gentrified dumps. The help is always slow. He turned back to me. Hey, maintenance girl, just go find the super or the landlord or whoever signs your checks. Tell them Jason from Omnistream is here, and I don't wait for doors. Maintenance girl. I felt a smile twitch at the corner of my mouth. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a shark spotting a swimmer with a cramp. He thought I was the janitor. He thought I was the hired help. He had absolutely no idea that he was standing on concrete I poured, under lights I wired, talking to the woman who owned the very air he was currently wasting. I'll see what I can do, I said, my voice dropping an octave into pure, unfiltered sarcasm. Yeah, you do that, he said, turning his back on me to take a selfie with a rusty pipe. #industrial chic, #hustle culture, he mumbled as he typed. I walked away. I didn't walk to the loading dock. I walked to the server room. I checked the logs. Jason's company had been in the building for 6 hours. That time, they had triggered 2 fire door alarms, propped open a security gate, and now, judging by the smell, were trying to plug a server rack into a standard 110V outlet. I watched him on the monitors from my office, a soundproof bunker hidden behind the boiler room. He was kicking the loading dock door now. Disrupt this, I whispered, and I went home for the weekend. I didn't unlock the door. Thing people don't understand about commercial buildings is that they breathe. They have lungs, HVAC handlers, veins, copper wiring, and a brain, the building management system. And I am the neurosurgeon. My weekend was supposed to be peaceful. I had a bottle of Merlot that cost more than Jason's shoes and a stack of trade magazines about photovoltaic efficiency. But my phone kept vibrating. Not with texts, but with alerts from the BMS app. Alert Zone 4 Penthouse Sublet Power Load Critical. Alert Zone 4 Noise Decibel Breach. Alert Zone 4 HVAC Compressor Overload. Jason wasn't just moving in, he was colonizing. I opened the app. The Foundry is a smart building, disguised as a dumb one. I spent 10 years retrofitting it with sensors that measure everything from humidity to CO2 levels. I can tell when a tenant is brewing coffee. I can tell when their stressed temperature goes up. Right now, I could tell Jason was throwing a party. It was Saturday night. The logs showed a spike in energy consumption that looked like a heart attack on an EKG. They had plugged in something massive, probably a sound system that belonged in a stadium, or maybe a crypto mining rig disguised as an espresso machine. I tapped into the security feed. The camera in the 4th floor hallway showed a conga line of influencers, girls in dresses that defied physics and guys in vests that defied good taste, waiting to get into suite 404. Jason was at the door, holding a red cup, looking like the king of a very small, very loud hill. He had duct taped the fire door open. I took a sip of wine. This was a violation of Lease Clause 14, B Fire Safety, and Clause 9, A Noise Ordinances, but I wasn't going to call the cops. That's too easy. That's too Karen. Prefer to let the building do the talking. I accessed the HVAC controls for Zone 4. You like it hot, Jason? I muttered. Let's see how your hair gel holds up against a tropical climate. I didn't turn the heat on. That would be obvious. Instead, I disabled the cooling compressors for his zone and adjusted the humidity set point to Amazon rainforest. In a room packed with 50 bodies dancing and drinking, the temperature would naturally rise. Without the AC to strip the moisture, it would become a swamp within 20 minutes. I watched on the monitor. It was subtle at first. People stopped jumping. Then the fanning started. Expensive menus were waved in front of sweaty faces. Jason was running around, yelling at a thermostat on the wall. He was jamming his finger into the plastic casing like it owed him money. Joke's on him. That thermostat is a dummy unit. Installed it purely for the psychological comfort of tenants who think they have control. Real control happens on my iPad, 3 miles away while I'm wearing fuzzy socks. My phone rang. It was the emergency maintenance line. I let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes later, a voicemail popped up. It was Jason. Yeah, this is Jason from Omnistream. The AC is broken. We're dying up here. Fix it. Now. It smells like a locker room. This is unacceptable service for the rent we're paying. Technically, he wasn't paying me rent. He was paying the subleaser who was paying me. And the subleaser, a nice woman named Sarah, was currently in Bali and not answering her phone. I didn't call him back. I just watched. The party thinned out. The beautiful people don't like to sweat. They started drifting toward the exit, their makeup melting, their enthusiasm wilting like lettuce in a sauna. Jason was frantic, trying to hand out warm beers, but the vibe was dead. The networking event of the century had turned into a hot yoga class with alcohol. The next morning, Monday, I was in the lobby, checking the mail. I looked presentable, blazer, jeans, clean boots, not maintenance girl attire, but owner attire. Jason stormed in, looking hungover and furious. He spotted old Mike, the security guard who has been with me since the building was a textile factory. Mike is 70, deaf in one ear and knows where all the bodies are buried. You, Jason shouted at Mike, are you the super? Mike looked at me, a twinkle in his eye. He knows the game. He shrugged. I just watched the door, son. Well, tell your boss that the HVAC system is garbage. Jason screamed, his voice cracking. My launch party was a disaster. Who runs this place, a slumlord? I cleared my throat. Is there a problem? I asked, stepping forward. Jason spun around. He narrowed his eyes, recognized me, but he couldn't place it. The jumpsuit was gone, the hair was down. To him, faces of service workers don't register. Yeah, there's a problem, he sneered. The building is falling apart, and wait. Didn't I tell you to fix the loading dock door on Friday? He squinted. The recognition landed. Oh my God, you're the cleaning lady I saw in the basement. My blood pressure spiked, but my face remained stone. I'm not the cleaning lady, I said calmly. Whatever. Maintenance, janitor, same thing. He waved his hand dismissively. Just tell Miss Langley, or whatever the name on the lease is, that I'm docking the rent for the AC failure. He walked past me, bumping my shoulder. Miss Langley, Mike whispered after the elevator doors closed. You want me to ban his fob? No, Mike, I said, smoothing my blazer. He wants a war with the building. I'm going to give him one. But first, I need to check his paperwork. Tuesday morning. Building smelled like burnt popcorn and ego. I was on the 4th floor, standing on a ladder with my head inside a ceiling tile. I wasn't actually fixing anything. I was installing a clandestine localized decibel meter right above Jason's suite entrance. Why? Because data is ammunition, and I was stockpiling. The hallway was busy. It was 10 o'clock a.m., and the other tenants, lawyers, architects, serious people who drink black coffee, were moving about. Jason's door flew open. He emerged with 3 people in suits, investors, I assumed. They looked like sharks in Italian wool. Jason was in pitch mode, waving his arms, talking about disrupting the paradigm of connectivity. And that's why Omnistream needs a space that reflects our raw energy, he was saying. We're taking over this whole floor eventually. The landlord is practically begging us to expand. I snorted. It was involuntary. A loud, sharp sound from the top of the ladder. Jason stopped. He looked up. The sharks looked up. Excuse me, Jason said, his smile tight. I looked down, a screwdriver in my hand, just clearing my throat. Don't mind the dust. He stared at me. The connection clicked. The maintenance girl from Friday, the cleaning lady from Monday. Now the annoyance on a ladder. You again, he sighed, performing exasperation for his audience. Guys, this is what I'm talking about. Infrastructure here is vintage. We're constantly having to ride the staff to keep things running. He looked at me, his eyes cold. Hey, while you're up there, fix the light in the conference room. It's flickering. It's giving me a migraine. I climbed down slowly. I folded the ladder. I wiped my hands on my pants. I don't change light bulbs in tenant suites, I said, my voice flat. That's your responsibility. Read your lease. Clause 5, Section C, Interior Maintenance. Air in the hallway changed. It got heavy. You don't talk back to the talent in Jason's world. He stepped closer, invading my personal space. I could smell the stale coffee and the mints he used to cover it up. Excuse me, he hissed, low enough so the investors couldn't hear the menace, but loud enough for me. I don't think you understand how this works. I pay the bills here. You fix the shit. That's the transaction. Now, go get a light bulb. I'm calling your supervisor and getting your ass fired before lunch. One of the investors chuckled. Feisty help is hard to find, huh, Jason? That was it. That was the moment. The click. I didn't yell. I didn't throw the ladder. I felt a cold, calm clarity wash over me. It was the same feeling I get when I look at a complex schematic and see exactly where the short circuit is. I'm not maintenance, I said, loud enough for the investors to hear. And I don't have a supervisor. Jason laughed, a barking, ugly sound. Then what are you, a squatter? Leave, get off my floor before I call security. Your floor? I raised an eyebrow. Get out. He pointed down the hall. I looked at him. I looked at his finger. I looked at the investors who were now watching with amusement. Okay, I said, I'll leave. I picked up my ladder. I didn't look back. I walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and waited. And don't come back without a work order. Shouted after me. The investors laughed. The door to his suite slammed shut. I rode the elevator down to the basement in silence. My heart wasn't racing. My hands weren't shaking. I was completely, terrifyingly calm. I walked into my office. I locked the door. I sat down in my Herman Miller Aeron chair, the one luxury I allow myself. I pulled up the master lease agreement for the building. I navigated to the folder labeled Tenant, Design Corp. Subleaser. I opened the file, Sublease Agreement, Omnistream. I cracked my knuckles. You want me to leave, Jason? I whispered to the screen. Fine, but if I leave, I'm taking the building with me. I didn't just want to evict him. Eviction is messy. It takes months. Judges, lawyers, appeals. It's a headache. No, I wanted to dismantle him. I wanted to make his environment so hostile, so technically uninhabitable, that he would beg to leave. Open the building systems, critical infrastructure panel. Then I opened the legal, lease violations spreadsheet. I started typing. Entry 1, unauthorized modification of electrical grid server racks. Entry 2, unauthorized commercial assembly party. Entry 3, verbal harassment of building owner, recorded on hallway cam 4. He thought he was subletting an office. He didn't realize he was subletting the inside of machine. He just insulted the operator. Time to tighten the screws. There's a special kind of poetry in a commercial lease agreement. Most people see a wall of text, written in the dry, soul-sucking language of lawyers. I see a weapon. I see a schematic of trapdoors and tripwires, waiting for a moron to step on them. I spent Wednesday turning my office into a war room. The walls were covered in blueprints, but my desk was covered in paper. I dug out the original master lease for the graphic design firm that sublet to Jason. They were good tenants, quiet, respectful, paid in autodraft. But in their haste to move their operations to a cheaper hub in Austin, they had been sloppy with the sublease rider. I found it on page 42, paragraph 7, the permitted use clause. The premises shall be used solely for general office administration and graphic design work. Any use involving heavy machinery, high-density data processing, commercial event hosting, or manufacturing requires prior written consent from the landlord. I leaned back, lighting a cigarette. I know, smoking indoors is illegal. I own the building. I turned off the smoke detector in my office. Sue me. Jason wasn't doing general office administration. Based on the power draw I was seeing on the monitors, he was running a crypto mining farm or hosting a server for a massive app. Amperage spikes were consistent with high-load GPU processing. That's not office work. That's industrial data processing. And then there were the mixers. My phone pinged. It was an email from the tenant below Jason, a patent law firm. Subject, Elephant Stampede. Message, Rebecca, is there a bowling alley being installed upstairs? The ceiling tiles are shaking dust onto our briefs. Please advise. I checked the security feed. Jason was on the roof. Roof of the foundry is not a terrace. It is a membrane roof covered in gravel, housing 4 massive HVAC chiller units, a nest of solar inverters, and enough pigeon crap to fertilize a farm. It is a strictly authorized personnel-only zone. Jason had dragged a keg up there, and a DJ booth. He was hosting a rooftop VC mixer. I watched the feed. He was leaning against chiller unit #3 like it was a bar counter. Chiller unit #3 is a high-voltage beast that vibrates with enough torque to take your arm off if you touch the wrong belt. And he was balancing a martini on it. Unbelievable, I whispered. I didn't storm up there. That's what he wanted. He wanted the confrontation. He wanted to call me a Karen in front of his friends. Instead, I pulled up the camera logs. I saved the clip of him and his buddies trespassing on a hazardous roof zone. Then I pulled up the utility logs. I cross-referenced the time of his mixer with the energy spike. Then I pulled up the municipal zoning codes. The roof was not zoned for assembly. If the fire marshal saw this, he would fine the building $10,000. But I wasn't going to call the fire marshal. I was going to use the fine as leverage. I started drafting the notice to cure. In the legal world, this is the warning shot. It says, you are breaking the rules. Fix it or die. But I needed more. Needed to know exactly what he was hiding in that server room. The power draw was too high for just a startup. I waited until 2:00 a.m. The building was empty. The mixers had ended. The janitorial staff had come and gone. I put on my soft-soled boots. I took my master key. I went up to the 4th floor. The hallway was silent, smelling of stale vape smoke. I unlocked the door to suite 404. It was worse than I thought. The office was a disaster. Beanbag chairs everywhere. Empty pizza boxes stacked like Jenga towers. But in the back, where the conference room used to be, the door was modified with a keypad lock. I didn't have the code, but I didn't need it. I popped the ceiling tile in the hallway, climbed up into the plenum space, and crawled over the wall. I looked down through the grid. It wasn't just servers. It was a render farm. Rows and rows of high-end GPUs whirring away in the dark, bathed in red LED light. They were hot. I could feel the heat rising through the tiles. He had tapped into the building's 220V line illegally. I saw the splice, a messy amateur job wrapped in electrical tape that was already melting. He was stealing power, and he was creating a fire hazard that could burn my building to the ground. I took photos, high-resolution, low-light photos. I shimmied back out, replaced the tile, and dusted myself off. Game over. Chad, I whispered. I went back to my office. I didn't send the notice to cure. I drafted a new document, notice of sublease termination pending structural review, but legal notices are boring. Jason doesn't read. He needs a physical reminder of who holds the leash. I looked at the BMS screen. The rooftop unit chiller #3, the one he was leaning on earlier, controls the cooling for the 4th floor. I hovered my mouse over the manual override button. Let's see how well those servers run without cooling, I grinned. Thursday started with a heat wave. Not a meteorological one. It was a pleasant 72 degrees in Ohio, but a localized, tactical heat wave centered entirely on Suite 404. I had disabled the cooling loop for the fourth floor at 4 o'clock a.m. By 9 o'clock a.m., the sun hitting the brick exterior turned the suite into a slow cooker. Electronics generate heat. Bodies generate heat. Jason's illegal server farm was generating enough BTUs to heat a small village. I sat in my office, watching the temperature sensors climb. Zone 4 current temp, 78 degrees F. Zone 4 current temp, 82 degrees F. At 9:15, the first email arrived. To building management from Jason CEO at OmniStreamio subject. Urgent, AC broken again text. The AC is out. Sweltering up here. My team cannot ideate in these conditions. Fix it immediately. I replied with a pre-written auto-response I keep for special occasions. Auto-reply, thank you for your inquiry. Building systems are operating within normal parameters. Please check your local thermostat settings. Note, excessive electronic equipment may exceed the cooling load capacity of your suite. Have a productive day. I imagined him reading that. Imagined the vein in his forehead throbbing. By 11 o'clock a.m., the temperature was 88 degrees. I decided to escalate. The building runs on a smart water pressure system. I can control the flow rate to specific sectors to balance the load during peak hours, or, in this case, to simulate a drought. I throttled the water pressure to the fourth-floor kitchenette and bathrooms to 10%, just enough to trickle, just enough to be maddening. I watched on the hallway cam. One of the Brents, or maybe a Kyle, walked into the bathroom. He came out 2 minutes later, looking confused and shaking his wet hands because the air dryer was also, tragically, disabled at the breaker panel. Jason stormed out of his office. He was wearing a tank top now. Professionalism had dissolved along with his antiperspirant. Why is there no water? He screamed at the ceiling. He marched to the elevator. I knew where he was going. He was coming to the lobby to yell at Mike. I called Mike on the radio. Mike, incoming Boji, code red. He's going to be hot and irrational. Copy that, Miss Langley, Mike wheezed. I'll put on my listening face. I switched the monitor to the lobby cam. Jason exploded out of the elevator. He looked damp. Hey, you, security. Mike looked up from his crossword puzzle. Help you, son? Everything is broken. The AC, the water, the internet is lagging. What kind of third world operation is this? Ah, the internet. I had almost forgotten. I tabbed over to the network switch controls. I didn't cut his internet, that would be too obvious. Instead, I set up a packet loss rule. Every 10th packet of data sent or received would just vanish. It's the digital equivalent of a stutter. Websites load, then freeze. Zoom calls disconnect for 3 seconds, then reconnect. It is psychological torture. Makes you question your sanity. I can't stream my pitch deck. Jason was yelling at Mike. Weather's nice though, Mike offered helpfully. I don't care about the weather. Where's the landlord? I want to speak to the owner right now. Owner's out of town, Mike lied effortlessly. Big conference. In, Iceland. Jason kicked the front desk. This is a breach of contract. I'm suing. I took a bite of a bagel. Go ahead, sue the subleaser, I thought. See how that goes. Jason pulled out his phone. He was dialing someone. Mom? Yeah, it's me. No, the office is a disaster. It's like a sweatshop. Can you talk to Dad's lawyer? Yeah, no, I need you to send more money for a coworking pass. We can't stay here. He was cracking, but he wasn't leaving. Not yet. He had a launch demo scheduled for Friday, tomorrow. The investors were coming. The press, or what passed for press in his circle, mostly TikTok bloggers, were coming. Couldn't move the venue. He was trapped. I checked the logs. He had brought in portable AC units. I saw them on the camera, big, ugly plastic tubes sticking out of the windows. He was trying to fight the building. Cute. Portable ACs draw a lot of power, and his server farm was already pushing the amperage to the limit. I did the math. Servers plus portable ACs plus sound system for the launch was going to exceed the 200-amp breaker capacity for his panel. I didn't need to do anything else. Physics was about to take the wheel, but just to be sure, I drafted the final document, the one I would hand him personally. The stage was set. Friday morning, D-Day, or, as I like to call it, the day Jason learns what a circuit breaker actually does. The lobby was buzzing. Caterers were wheeling in carts of overpriced hors d'oeuvres. Banner was being hung over the entrance. Omnistream, the future is now. The irony was thick enough to choke a horse. The future was currently being powered by extension cords daisy-chained across the floor because I hadn't reset the outlets in the conference room. I was in my office printing. The printer hummed, a reliable, soothing sound. Document 1, Notice of Immediate Lease Revocation. Document 2, Evidence of Code Violations, Photos of the Server Farm. Document 3, Cease and Desist Order Regarding Unauthorized Electrical Modifications. Document 4, invoice for damages $14,500. I placed them in a crisp, cream-colored envelope. I sealed it with a wax stamp. Okay, not really, but I licked it with extreme prejudice. I walked out to the lobby. Jason was there, directing the placement of a cardboard cutout of himself. He looked manic. His eyes were red. His hair was frizzy thanks to the humidity, and he was vibrating with caffeine. Jason, I said. He spun around. He saw me, the maintenance girl, holding an envelope. Not now, he barked. Can't you see I'm busy? If the toilet is clogged, call a plumber. I don't have time for your incompetence today. This is for you, I said, extending the envelope. It's from the landlord. He snatched it from my hand without looking at me. Finally, probably an apology letter, or the check for the AC repairs I demanded. He tossed the envelope onto a pile of swag bags. I'll read it later. Go clean up the loading dock. My investors are arriving in an hour. He didn't open it. Perfect. If he had opened it, he would have seen the line, effective immediately. All utility services to Suite 404 will be suspended due to safety violations. He would have had time to cancel. He would have had time to move the event. Because he saw me as furniture, because he saw me as beneath him, he threw his own eviction notice into a swag bag. I walked away. Have a great event, Jason, I said. Yeah, whatever, he waved. I went back to the basement. I sat in front of the main distribution panel. It's a massive wall of gray steel, humming with 480 volts of potential energy. It controls everything, the lifeblood of the building. I had my tablet propped up on a crate. On the screen was the live feed of Suite 404. The guests were arriving. Men in suits, women in blazers. They were fanning themselves. The portable AC units were roaring, fighting a losing battle against the heat generated by the servers Jason refused to turn off. Turn up the music, Jason yelled on the feed. Drown out the AC noise. The bass kicked in. The lights flickered. I watched the power load graph. Load, 92%. Load, 95%. Load, 98%. He was right on the edge. The main breaker for the fourth floor has a thermal magnetic trip. If it gets too hot or draws too much current, it snaps. And when it snaps, it sounds like a gunshot. I could have just let physics do it. I could have sat back and let him trip it himself. But I wanted to be the one to pull the trigger. I wanted him to know it wasn't an accident. I saw Jason take the microphone. He stepped onto a small stage. Behind him, a massive screen was projecting his slide deck. Welcome, visionaries, he shouted. Welcome to the disruption. Disruption incoming, I whispered. I opened the smart breaker control interface. I selected panel 4 main. I hovered over the command, trip. My finger hovered over the glass. This was for the maintenance girl comment. This was for the loading dock. This was for the unauthorized server farm. This was for the arrogance of every man who thinks the world runs on magic, not mechanics. I waited for him to get to the financial projections slide. As you can see, Jason said, pointing to a graph that went straight up, our power is limitless. Actually, I said to the empty basement, it's limited to 200 amps. I tapped the screen. Clack. The sound of a heavy industrial breaker tripping is distinct. It's a solid, mechanical thud that vibrates through the floor. Down in the basement, it was a satisfying punctuation mark. Up on the 4th floor was the apocalypse. On the monitor, the room went black. Instantly, the music died, the projector died. The portable AC units groaned and spun down into silence. The servers, those precious, illegal revenue generators, whined as their fans lost power. For 3 seconds, there was absolute silence. Then the panic set in. Whoa, someone shouted. Is this part of the show? An investor asked, his voice nervous in the dark. The emergency lights kicked on. They are harsh, battery-powered LED strips that cast long, ugly shadows. They don't illuminate the room, they just make everyone look like they're in a hostage video. Jason stood on the stage, the microphone dead in his hand. He looked like a ghost. Stay calm, he shouted, his voice cracking without the amplification. Just a fuse. Typical beta building infrastructure. We have backup generators. The power will be back in 10 seconds. I laughed. No, you don't, Jason. I said to the screen. The backup generator is for life safety systems only, elevators, stairwell lighting, fire alarms. It does not power the outlets in a tenant suite, and it definitely doesn't power a crypto mine. 10 seconds passed, 20. The room began to heat up rapidly. The pourable acts were dead. The bodies were packed tight. The smell of sweat and panic began to replace the smell of expensive cologne. Jason, it's getting hot in here, a woman said. Losing connection to the server, another voice cried out. The demo app is down. Jason scrambled off the stage. He was frantic. He pulled out his phone, using the flashlight to blind his own investors as he ran toward the door. I'll fix it. I'll go reset it myself. Nobody leave. This is just a test of our resilience. He ran into the hallway. He ran to the electrical panel in the utility closet. I watched him on the hallway cam, yanked the panel door open. He stared at the breakers. He flipped them. Nothing happened. The sub-panel in his closet was fed by the main panel in the basement, and I had locked the basement panel out. He slammed the closet door. He kicked it. Damn, he screamed, his voice echoing down the hall. Back in the suite, the investors were standing up. This is a joke, one said. Let's go. I'm sweating through my suit. Omnistream, more like Omnisham. Jason ran back into the room. No, it's the landlord. She's incompetent. I'm going to sue her into the ground. Just wait 5 minutes. He grabbed a waiter. Go find someone. Find the janitor. Find that woman. That was my cue. I stood up. I smoothed my blazer. I picked up my tablet. I didn't run. I walked. I took the service elevator up. It runs on the emergency circuit. I stepped out onto the 4th floor. The hallway was filled with people leaving. Investors streaming out, loosening their ties, checking their phones. I walked against the current. I looked like Moses parting the Red Sea of disappointed venture capitalists. I reached the door of Suite 404. Jason was standing there, drenched in sweat, illuminated by the harsh glare of the emergency light. He looked wild. He saw me. You, he screamed. He lunged at me, pointing a finger in my face. You did this? You tripped the breaker, you incompetent. He stopped. He looked at my face. Really looked at it. He looked at the tablet in my hand, which was displaying the live schematic of his suite's power load. He looked at the calmness in my eyes. Where is the landlord? He hissed. Get her on the phone right now. I tapped the screen on my tablet. The emergency lights in the hallway flickered once. Jason, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. I think you should read the letter I gave you. The letter? He blinked, sweat dripping into his eye. What are you talking about? Fix the lights? I can't fix the lights, Jason, I said calmly, because I turned them off. The silence that followed was heavy. The few remaining investors near the door stopped. They turned to watch. This was more interesting than the slide deck. You turned them off, Jason stuttered. You're the janitor, you can't. I'm not the janitor, I stepped closer. And I'm not the maintenance girl. My name is Rebecca Langley. I own this building. I own the copper wires you're melting, own the cooling units you're overloading. And I own the lease you just violated about 12 different ways. His jaw actually dropped. It was a cartoonish, physical reaction. You're the owner. Surprise, I said deadpan, but you were wearing coveralls. You were fixing the... I'm a hands-on owner, I interrupted. Unlike you, I actually know how my business works. I held up the tablet. I swiped to the photos I had taken in the ceiling, photos of his illegal server farm. This is a render farm, Jason, or maybe a crypto mine. I don't really care which. What I care about is that it's drawing 240 amps on a 200 amp circuit. It's a class of fire hazard. It's a violation of your sublease rider, Clause 7, regarding commercial use. And it's stealing electricity. I swiped again, the graph showing the power spike. And this, I pointed to the red line, is where you tried to run a nightclub on a system designed for graphic design studio. You didn't just trip a breaker, you melted the subfeed. Jason looked at the tablet. He looked at the investors who were now whispering. This is a misunderstanding, he stammered, his arrogance deflating like a punctured tire. We were pivoting. We needed the compute power. I was going to pay for the upgrade. You didn't ask for an upgrade, I said, yelled at the help and treated my building like a dump. Look, Rebecca. Miss Langley, he tried to smile. It was a ghastly sight. We can work this out. I have funding. I can write a check right now. Just turn the power back on. These people, they need to see the demo. There is no demo, I said, and there is no lease. I pointed to the pile of swag bags in the corner, illuminated by the emergency strobe. The envelope I gave you, that's your eviction notice, effective immediately. For cause, safety violations, unauthorized modifications, and breach of contract. He looked at the swag pile. He looked back at me. You can't do that. I have rights. I have a sublease. Read the sublease, Jason, I said, my voice hard as steel. Clause 19, landlord reserves the right to immediately terminate tenancy in the event of actions threatening the structural or systemic integrity of the property. You threatened my grid. You're done. One of the investors, a tall man with silver hair, stepped forward. Is this true? He asked Jason. You're running an illegal mine on a residential commercial lease? No, it's distributed computing. Jason lied. It's a fire hazard, I corrected. And as of 5 minutes ago, I revoked the certificate of occupancy for this suite. You are all technically trespassing in a condemned zone. The silver-haired man looked at Jason with pure disdain. Told us you owned the infrastructure. I. Jason stammered. I'm out, the investor said. He walked past Jason without looking back. Don't call me. The others followed. It was a mass exodus. Jason stood alone in the dark, the emergency light buzzing overhead. He looked at me with pure hatred. "You ruined me," he whispered. "You petty, vindictive." "I didn't ruin you, Jason," I said. "I just fixed the glitch." The low doubt was pathetic. There's a specific sound to a failed startup moving out in the middle of the night. It's the sound of expensive office chairs bumping against door frames and hushed arguments about whose dad is going to pay for the U-Haul. I stood by the loading dock, the one I had finally unlocked, smoking a cigarette. Jason was carrying a box of monitors. He looked smaller. The strut was gone. His shoes were scuffed. He walked past me. He didn't say a word. He didn't look me in the eye. "Careful with that," I called out, exhaling a plume of smoke. "Don't trip." He stiffened, but he kept walking. I had given him 24 hours to vacate before I changed the locks. He tried to threaten legal action, of course. His lawyer, who I suspect was just a frat brother with a podcast, sent me a cease and desist. I replied with a PDF of the melted wiring photos and a quote from my electrician for the repairs, $18,000. Legal threats stopped. The check for the damages arrived the next day. It was from his mother. I watched the truck pull away. The tail lights faded into the city smog. The building side, I swear I could feel the foundry relax. The voltage stabilized. The harmonics in the pipes smoothed out. The cancer was gone. I walked back inside. The lobby was quiet. Old Mike was asleep at the desk. I took the elevator up to the 4th floor. It was empty. Omnistream decal was peeled off the glass door, leaving a sticky residue. I walked into the dark suite. It still smelled faintly of nervous sweat and ozone. I went to the thermostat, the dummy one on the wall. I patted it affectionately. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the BMS app. Zone for status, vacant. System mode, eco-idle. I tapped a button. The lights in the suite softly illuminated at 20% brightness. The AC hummed to life, a gentle, steady purr, setting the room to a crisp, dry 72 degrees. The systems were balanced. The load was nominal. I walked to the window and looked out at the city. Some people think being a landlord is just collecting checks. They don't understand. It's about maintaining the ecosystem. It's about protecting the machine from the ghosts in the wires and the idiots in the distressed jeans. I pulled a mini bottle of whiskey from my pocket, a souvenir from a tenant's holiday basket. I cracked it open. "Here's to maintenance," I whispered. I drank it in one shot. Then I turned off the lights, locked the door, and went downstairs to fix a leaky valve in the basement. Because unlike Jason, I actually have work to do.
Office life teaches us one thing over and over: people reveal themselves eventually. This story just happened to catch that moment on record. Thanks for listening. See you again soon.